So my name is John Mulhausen. I just joined the Kubernetes team in January to become the lead technical writer. Kubernetes didn't have a lead technical writer until I came on. It was just engineers trying to do things, basically. The TLDR of this talk is that as a result of this understaffing, the docs have been not great. That's because the engineers had other problems. They're a little overworked, but they also kind of came up with engineerly solutions to doc problems that I think made it very difficult to contribute, such as Go scripts and munging scripts that manipulate the docs, make it difficult to contribute without running their stuff first. Whereas now we have GitHub Pages, which does so much stuff natively. And now we do have this writer, and that's me, who stands before you. And I would like to pay you bounties for helping me fix the Kubernetes documentation. Literal bounties with monetary value. We're getting a much improved new site and a new docs authoring process to go with that site tonight. And so literally as soon as they wake up in Mountain View, I told them just go ahead and switch the domain over to the new repo. So that's happening imminently. It might even happen while we're in the middle of this talk. And the new repo that I spoke of is at kubernetes/kubernetes.github.io, which is the format for GitHub Pages projects. And just so I have sort of the Martha Stewart cake ready when we get to it, I'm going to sign into GitHub and fork this right now so that we stand up a fork on my GitHub Pages address. So it takes a few seconds to fork, and you guys will do this too when you're all wonderful Kubernetes docs contributors, which I know you're going to be. And the only thing you have to do to stage is just use your own github.io address, which is your username.github.io. So just rename your fork this, and magically http/yourusername.github.io is staging our site. And you can edit it and do all kinds of crazy stuff, add graphics, change the styles, add new information, send us a pull request when you're done. You've contributed to the docs. It's going to be that easy. All right, so I'm going to rename. Usually, if you're starting a new GitHub Pages project, it takes like 5 minutes or something for GitHub to spin up everything. So we're going to go back to the slide deck and come back to that. All right, so back here. Let's compare the old site with the new site. The old site, I'm not going to bring it up in the browser. I think everyone's seen Kubernetes IO. The docs change process was you install Go and run a battery of munch scripts that validate whether your docs is going to work with the repo. You submit a PR up to the Kubernetes repo, and more CI scripts run up there. And what you ultimately submit is only good in the head branch, and some other munging script turns that into a versioned version of the doc, and then eventually that ends up going live at the point where they cut the branch, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of a terrible process. And at no point can you stage this. At no point can you pull down that site and look at it on your laptop and say, I have a copy of Kubernetes.io. I know exactly what my docs change is going to look like. You can't do that right now. Hopefully the projector doesn't explode, but I'm about to show the new site. The new site is at kubernetes.github.io. And I have been working with a creative agency called United Creations to create this. It's lovely, it's wonderful. I wrote some of this copy. You can critique it or send a PR to fix it. And that's kind of a top to bottom look. So our docs creation process is you hit the blue pencil that I put on every single page of the docs and write stuff. That's a little simpler. In fact, it's so easy even a caveman can do it, as Geico would say. The bounty program. So Kubernetes bounties, I don't know if you've heard of DigitalOcean's like tutorial writing bounty program. I think it was like make up to $200 for writing a tutorial, which takes a long time to write a tutorial. Just as an author, I know that. We're more like get small amounts for small contributions right now. That's kind of how we're launching. The payment is credit for Google Cloud Platform, which has Google Container Engine, will run your Kubernetes app. Bigger projects like the tutorials, we're still kind of contemplating if you have a proposal for a tutorial. In fact, someone who gave me his card just had one. File a bug and CC me on it. I would love to hear it, and we'll talk about that. But right now, I have a label with just a few things in it that are really important to us, and that label is called bounties. So if you look and you search the issues on the GitHub repo for the bounty label, you'll see a few things. I just, for an experiment, I put a bug. It's like $25 of credit if you fix this bug. It affects like a dozen pages. Diagrams. We desperately need diagrams. Kubernetes is such a visual concept with clusters and network rules and everything. It would be wonderful to have diagrams. Cross-page linking, extremely poor. Unless you have every vocab word in your head while you're reading the docs, you never know what the heck we're talking about. Things like that. So there's more to come here. Just keep an eye on this label, because it's going to get populated with a lot more stuff. But I invite anyone to jump in now. You can get credit for this now. Sarah's given me $10,000 worth of credit to give away. So I sound like the price is right now, but we're going to move on. Fabulous money and prizes. So when you submit the PR, just so I know you're looking for a bounty, be sure to reference the bounties bug number. The anatomy of the new site. So none of this munging script stuff. It's a pure GitHub Pages project. It runs Jekyll. So for those who need to know exactly how the site works, go look at Jekyll's docs. The docs are edited in Markdown, which is wonderfully readable in Notepad or whatever you're using to edit docs, VI. Left navigation tree is edited in a YAML file now. It was a really gnarly unordered list in HTML. Liquid templating language for conditionals, procedurally generated docs. You can do that, do a for loop across a YAML file, produce a table. You can do things like that and program our site that way. We accept JavaScript PRs. If you have something, we put a reference to jQuery on every page, because just everybody knows it. So feel free to use it. SAS partials for CSS. Rouge does syntax highlighting, so any programming language Rouge knows about, we can put color coding on the code example. And none of this master branch crap with the docs. From now on, whenever you edit in the master branch, you're editing the current stable version of Kubernetes. Right now, that's 1.2. So that means that the docs URLs are no longer kubernetes.io/v1.1/docs blah, blah, blah. It's just kubernetes.io/docs/nodes or pods. And if you want to see the old docs or see the future Kubernetes release, go into GitHub and grab the branch, because you can download that and stage it anytime you want, or fork it and stage it anytime you want. We figure that's kind of good enough. Most people are interested in V now, so let's just make that master and move on. And having canonical URLs, way better for findability too. Instead of 12 versions of a doc, there's one. So, as we're about to find out, you don't need to install anything to edit the docs. So I talked about Jekyll and everything, but let's visit my fork. And I hope to heck that GitHub did not finish forking. Okay, well, Martha Stewart aside, I'm going to pull out the pre-baked thing and just show what it basically will look like. So on every page, I put this pencil icon, right? If you click that, I intercept you really quick, just for people who aren't used to the workflow or whatever, to just give you here's instructions. But you can skip that if you're a veteran of forking and editing docs or whatever. And then you're just writing the source code for that exact page. So you don't have to worry about installing anything. You just make your changes, and at the bottom hit the green button. We get your docs changed. You never installed a thing. So normally you would do this, and you would be kind of spit out in your fork, and you could continue to make GitHub pages changes, but my fork is not live, so I won't show how that works. Normally, like, if you update a fork, it's live on your fork as soon as you hit commit, right? So no publishing step. So it's going to work that way. Basically, like, as soon as something is committed to a repo in the cloud, the staging URL is updated. It's perfectly synchronous. So, and as a note, you still don't have to clone the site just to get a file up, because they just added drag and drop file uploading. So if you're looking at your fork, you want to add a diagram, drop it in the browser. So we talked about that. Yeah, so there we go. That also works on the live site, the whole Blue Pencil thing. Locally, you do have to have Ruby 2.2, and then you run these 3 commands. And then you're ready to stage what you're seeing live on your laptop. And it's those 3 commands. I mean, you basically just install the GitHub Pages package, and that gets you Jekyll and Markdown, the Markdown processor it uses, and Rouge and all that stuff that GitHub Pages is dependent on. Then you clone our site, and then you can serve it with the Jekyll command. Now, I'm going to back out here just to show something about how easy it is. If I'm serving off of kubernetes.github.io, so Jekyll serve, it builds the site. It takes about a few seconds, and it gives you the URL. You go to it. So I'm viewing the documentation, and I see something in user guide that I think is quirky. So I'm in docs, I'm in user guide, index.html or somewhere, index.md. I have a spiffy markdown editor called Mao, which is pretty neat. So if you don't have any familiarity, I'll just make that change. We'll just look for that. I hit save. Jekyll says 1 file changed. I'm done serving it in 0.8 seconds. And much familiarity becomes any familiarity, just like that. So then when you're done with all this, just send us the PR, just like you would if you were up on the site. You do have to install stuff to work this way, but it's kind of comfortable because you can just clone it and work offline. Like I've actually written docs in the train, which is underground, and that's my life. But it's so portable now that you're not reliant on any of this Go script stuff. I'm just trying to get you guys out of the woods on that. So those are the sort of 2 scenarios. You can edit locally, you can edit in the cloud. We got through that. Here's how reviews are going to work. I'm basically using a system of GitHub labels to ensure that what comes to me is of good quality and has been properly tech reviewed. So let's look. Somebody said they have an open PR. So the PRs are basically, it's really simple. If there's something that needs docs review, then I write needs docs review, the blue. If you guys haven't responded to my stuff yet, then open issues. And when you guys have satisfied everything, docs look good to me. Tech review, those guys are lagging behind. Everything needs a tech review. But once both of us go green, then you're in. And if there's no tech review needed, I'm probably going to just wave you in. I'm totally easy. So
what happens to the docs that are on
Kubernetes, that's migrated away from. The Kubernetes repo, that's no longer the source of truth for docs.
We have PRs that are there that merge. We need to submit a new PR.
Right. There was a docs freeze mail and a docs unfreeze mail and announcements about that on Kubernetes-dev. But I realize not everyone's on that Google group, But yes, that is what you need to do. And sorry about the inconvenience, but we're trying to get to a greater good. So I talked about that, LGTM process, diagram making. Now, because this is so important, I just want to show you really quickly how I propose this works. I'm paying $100 in credit to anyone who gives me a diagram and gets accepted. So you don't need to, again, I have a completely don't install anything workflow. I provide a assets slide deck. It's full of like vector icons for dragging and dropping diagram elements around. And it also has grids for layout and guidelines about what colors you can use and stuff. That's just so we can keep consistency and have a look and feel, and there's a common visual language among the diagrams that users understand. It's from Google internally, and it applies to the Google Cloud Platform, so that's why there's sort of branding stuff about GCP. But, you know, ignore that. I mean, it's basically like the best group of diagram assets that I had to offer everybody. So let's talk about how to get out of this slide deck and into the docs just really quickly. I'll take just an example diagram. I think I saw there's huge icon libraries for all kinds of things. Here's a simple diagram, okay. So you basically just grab it and hit copy, and I'm going to go into Drive and start. If anyone's familiar with Google Drawings, that's a relatively new form of Google document in Drive. It's kind of cool. So if you paste it in here, it shows up, right? And I'm going to put it up here in the top right and resize the canvas like that. And save this as scalable vector graphics. And I want vector graphics on this site. I'm tired of rasterized images. There's all kinds of resolutions and all kinds of devices. So I don't want to see any pixels from you guys. I don't want to see it. All right. So yes, that is a challenge. That's why it's the $100 bounty. It's like we're shooting for the moon. So basically, really the only goal is just to get past me with the diagrams. If I feel that your diagram has value, you're in. So anywhere you feel that diagram should exist, please feel free to start making it. And there's actually diagrams all over the web about Kubernetes. If you just want to be a jerk and go kind of rip them off and make them with these assets, hey, whatever. As long as they get in the docs and look good and are SVG and are styled properly, I'm with you. You mean like a file into the repo? All you literally do, let me do it on my fork so I don't do it on the master repo. This might not be a great idea. Oh yeah, we can see. Let's see, that's a good idea. Boy, they're slow. All right, that's okay. Where did I go? There I am. It's literally just grab this file like that. See how it turned into just in the browser window. And whatever folder you're looking at will receive it. So that's it. So as soon as you've downloaded your SVG, you can drag and drop it that way. All right, diagram making is done. We're going to get into which one? It's in the issue, number 84. Yeah, I also sent this slide deck to the KubeCon organizers. I think they're going to host it somewhere. But I document every bounty thing. I put in all the details in the bug. So if you just look at the bug list in the new repo, you should be able to find this stuff. Okay, so other common tasks. These are quirks of how we set up this particular docs project. They're not really they don't take away from how portable the site is or anything. You should just probably know this so that you know how we structure things. So the left nav, the nice tree with branching and zippies and so forth, is all done with a YAML file. And that YAML file looks like this. So this is like the left nav for our docs. So, I mean, if you look at it, you understand it, right? It's basically the title and the URL. That's also how page titles are controlled. So if you don't like the title of a page, then you go in the YAML file. And that keeps the left nav and the page title in sync. Auto-generated table of contents. So, let's go back one. That is generated off the headers. So the sort of blue links at the top here, I didn't write any of this. That's just generated by the fact that there's a header called introduction and a header called whatever the next thing is, create your Node.js application. So the way you slot in an auto-generated table of contents is to type *TOC and then curly braces TOC. Presenting a code block. So Rouge is our syntax highlighting solution. That's the only one GitHub Pages supports, so that made it easy. They have a list of their lectures here. So we support, therefore, any language that is on this list and can syntax highlight with proper coloring and so forth. Why do I keep going ahead a slide? All right, go back. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to show an example. You guys know what syntax highlighting looks like. But I also have including a code example from an external file in the repo. And I wrote an include file to do that. So you put in the language as lecture value, then the file as relative to the doc file. And it has to be either a sibling or deeper. And the path to that file from the root of GitHub. So that way, when you're here, let me find where that's being used. You get this box, which has the name of the file and the syntax highlighted code for that. And the file name is linked to, and then you can see it on GitHub and kind of browse around and see if that's part of a greater solution you can download or whatever. And that's pretty much all the common tasks you really need to know. Like, I mean, the rest of it is just markdown writing. So I think everyone can understand markdown writing. You just basically type. Then I set up a few global variables that you may or may not need to use. The GitHub branch and the version of the docs branch, these are all kind of tied to the Kubernetes version that's current. So if you're in master, you don't have to set these ever. They're just there for you to use. And this example is showing I will link to things like, releases.ks.io, then this variable called GitHub branch, and then the rest of this path. And whenever that gets built, because there's global variables set, that will explode out to release 1.2. And that way, old versions that people download of the docs and future versions will all link to the branch on the main repo that corresponds with that release of the docs. So that keeps those things in sync. If I see unversioned links or if I see you hard linking to release 1.2, I'll probably have a comment that's like, you need to use this variable. Did you have a question?
Yeah, in that regard, does that solve the problem of if you go for something about Kubernetes, you have a link to like the master docs and then the like 1.1 docs?
Yes, it does. Yeah. In conclusion, you guys have been wonderful. The move is, I know it's painful when like a big chunk of things move away from the repo that everyone's used to, but it's not the end. It's the beginning of something that's wonderful, I think. My goal is to really increase the velocity of what we're able to do with the docs. It's been extremely encumbered by process and by overworked engineers for a long time. And I'm trying to make this, it's completely in browser now, it's completely frictionless to get in, and I'm trying to pay you guys to help, so I don't know how I could make it any easier. And that's the trade-off for taking it out of the repo. I realized it was kind of slick to have the docs in the same repo as the code, but the greater good is this, right? So of all the ways you can contribute to Kubernetes, I bet you anything that you'll like contributing to the docs the best. Not that I'm biased, I'm a technical writer. It's much easier to do than trying to contribute to the code base. The results are immediate. It's way easier to get pull requests past me than the Kubernetes authors. And I've always found that when I try to write a doc that explains a piece of technology, it actually teaches me a lot about that technology. So the path of being a writer has helped me learn so much. And I know that if you guys wanted to write the canonical doc on some Kubernetes process or some common task that people do in Kubernetes, that you would learn a lot about that too. And it'd be a great learning experience for you. It feels good to educate people. I mean, it doesn't feel, that word doesn't come up much in technical writing, like I'm an educator, but functionally that's really what you're doing. And the last thing is, if somebody were to work with me for a few months and develop a rapport with me and show me that they understand Kubernetes concepts and they know how to write a doc and they are responsive and professional, I would feel perfectly comfortable referring them to one of the many technical writing positions that are open to Google. So just saying you have a chance to show skills here that are actually marketable. Thank you very much. These are my contact points. I'll open for questions if we have any time. Yeah.
Nice presentation.
What? Oh, thank you.
Nice presentation. I just had an observation, right? So, so trying to submit tutorials to Cube, I found quite onerous because tutorials to actually be useful include the Cube assets, right? The pods, the replication controllers, etc. Which the current position is that they like roll into the build process, which means that like the actual Kubernetes build system has to actually be able to use these things and they work, which sounds reasonable on the surface, but like say for example I'm using some special kind of, it's an example around some special kind of storage or system that the build system can't actually access and fails, and which is a bummer, and I think it kind of inhibits, like it's much easier for me just to blog the stuff on my personal blog, than to contribute it, because I don't have that. I just wanted to know, is there any thought around that? Or
The thought around what? The fact that we can't adjudicate every solution that you write about?
To contribute tutorials to the Cube.
I mean, I feel like the way I've worded things as far as like needs tech review is either a Kubernetes author or a Kubernetes expert needs to sign off on this. So I feel like if there's only so many authors working on Kubernetes at Google, I know them, there's not many of them.
Right.
So they're overworked and they're probably not going to get around to trying your special storage solution or whatever you wrote about, right? But if you were to get the community to advocate for it, I would see no problem accepting that tutorial.
So so what is the sort of strategy here for the project? Because as another observation, the path of least resistance is not to contribute, right? So now I have to get somebody in the community to advocate, to build consensus, just to submit a tutorial. And I'll just blog the stuff,
Well, that's always a trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the thing that we're trying to do with official doc sets is when you put the stamp of the logo and you say this is our official documentation, it needs a certain amount of authority. So I can't tell you, yes, we're going to remove every barrier there is to publishing so you can just post whatever you want. So, but I do think getting other people to vouch for, yes, this works, this is +1, a few people saying, yeah, this is great, is a kind of reasonable trade-off. I know we can't get the Kubernetes authors to comment on everything, but I'm sure we could get there. And I'm afraid that's kind of where I'm going to have to draw the line. I need some adjudication.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes? Oh, sorry.
So what happens when he writes a tutorial that does some special storage sauce, and then Kubernetes revs? Who's maintaining that tutorial? That's always the problem we have with blogging, is that people will write a great tutorial, and then the next release it.
I mean, like, probably nobody, unless it's checked in as an example in the main Kubernetes repo where they have end-to-end testing, right?
Right, that's sort of what, I mean, well, I guess maybe, that's where I try to contribute, right?
Right.
And so that had quite a high bar, I guess.
Yeah, because you're in the main repo. I mean, that /examples is downloaded with every clone of the repo, right? So we have a few questions. Sorry, back there, you were...
It was just just a food of our thought. It's to add upon that. I mean, you can maintain your fork, right? And just like this is the awesome example for some, and it's not getting committed. But if it's so awesome, maintain your fork and advocate for it, and just keep it up to date. And you say, oh well, these are the official Kubernetes, but here is my much more better fork. And maybe you have PR open once in a while and say it's even getting better. So because I thought. What about non-official docs, right? Maybe we want to have some non-official docs, but that's basically forking. Right?
Well, I also have no problem with like sort of a from the community section of the docs, the official docs, where we just have outbound links of curated stuff. I mean, if it turns out that this tension can't be resolved through sort of hosting it officially, or means that would allow us to do that, then I have no problem just linking out to like a well-curated list. Again, probably adjudication would need to take place. But I have no problem with kind of from around the web type content. You had a question?
To add to this conversation, you're right, like a tutorial is like a very big investment, and
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal to get a new page, like 400 lines of new text that need to be looked at, you know. Yeah. Yes?
I have a question. We have a pull request open on Kubernetes and on documentation. I just saw it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, you said tech review. I mean, up to now it was one pull request. Now we have two pull requests. Is there like, is this now blocked? The normal pull request on the project now blocked by the documentation pull request?
I mean, that's going to have to be sort of through good product management kept in sync. And that's a common problem within Google, where the code base for the docs is different than the code like all the time. We're just going to have to work together to stay in sync. So your pull request is for some 1.2 bound thing, right? So if it's bound for a release, we're going to get better about tracking with branches for that. So future branches, we'll probably have a separate release process for stuff that's coming out for future Kubernetes release, so that we can get that stuff in asynchronously, and it's not so necessary to be in sync with how it's committed in the code base. Because now with a separate repo, we only serve from the master branch. So really, whatever that release bound change is doesn't go live until I finally flip the switch on the release. So you can submit asynchronously, and that will kind of relieve that a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be sort of, a lot of communication will be necessary to keep in sync. Yeah. Yes?
Good. In the docs, you have sometimes links to readmes that are under examples.
Links to readmes, yes.
Yeah, you have so it's linking to readmes in the slash example in the main repo.
Mm-hmm.
In the current site, it's really building the docs even with those readmes. So now that you've moved docs under this, what happens to the link to readmes?
We still link to them. So you can go over to the main repo and check out the readmes. We're in discussion about.
They get rendered with that new template?
No, they're just readmes on GitHub. So we link to the examples like over there, because they're not ready to migrate examples anywhere else yet. We are talking about decoupling, but the thing about decoupling is wherever you put the examples, we have the problem of making sure they still work when vNext of Kubernetes comes out. So, I mean, a new examples repo or bringing them into the docs means setting up the CI regime to make sure that that's happening. And they aren't ready to do that. So for now, it's kind of kludgy, but we are just linking directly to the readmes on GitHub.
Yeah, I just ran into some weird example, which is not really an example, but yet it's under the examples repo, and it's kind of, the line is blurry between docs and examples, and that's...
I can't account for what people put in the examples directory. If it wasn't an example, that's kind of too bad, but I don't have the examples directory in my repo, so I'm just linking over, you know. Yes?
So Kubernetes is a really young project, right?
Yeah.
Most of everyone's here like learning about like whether or not to, and there's a lot. You know, it's a very fast-paced project, and people say like Kubernetes is hard. Like, I feel like docs are like probably in the middle of this. Like, so how do you cope with that? Like, yeah.
I mean, I feel like what we're doing okay is giving people their first, like, hello world. You can kind of sort of do that all right. But I find that with complicated projects like Kubernetes, I was the docs lead for App Engine for 4 years before I came over, and I was just ready for a change. And the thing we had that was a problem there, and it's a problem here too, is the intermediate step. So we can always get people to put hello world up on their screen, but then kind of like if you imagine like a swimming pool that gets ever deeper, like, you know, step 3 and 4 into the deeper waters are always covered very poorly. We have all this reference documentation that is extremely detailed out in the 10-foot deep area of the pool, and then we have the kiddie pool covered with hello world, and then there's this chasm of like stuff that just doesn't get people to the deep end properly. And that is something I would really like to bridge. And I think, you know, they started to put something together with the Kubernetes 101 and 201 series that was okay. But I'd like something that was a little bit more guided learning and walked you through more practical examples to get you there. And for me, the learning curve has been incredibly steep because I'm used to developer-oriented stuff, and this is pretty ops-oriented. So, yeah?
So, you know, we're part of the Cube storage SIG and the big data SIG. And, you know, to your point, like we've had just other fish to fry, you know. And so, like, we've been discussing like how the Cube storage functionality is messaged. There's a gap, you know, it's weighted way to this persistent volume stuff and not towards the volume plugins.
Yeah.
And so, like, how do you propose, like, you work with the SIGs, right? So I would imagine the SIGs are the authority on the particular sphere of whatever they do. Like, do you want a focal there, or to get some developer rapport? Or?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, there's sometimes agendas with those people too. Like I've had some of these third-party vendors come up to me already. I've only been on the job 2 months.
Yeah.
And they're like, boy, your stuff is really flannel-centric. Well, I'm from this startup who has great networking solutions for all kinds of stuff. We would love to have our stuff in every single doc you have. On the other hand, it's an open source project. I mean, the guidance they gave me was the website should be Sweden. You know, like, I know you're going to write the docs for the Google, like the monetized Google Cloud platform host for Kubernetes stuff, Container Engine, but you guys need to keep Kubernetes IO Sweden. So if somebody has like a valuable piece of information who's a SIG or a partner, get it in there. I mean, it doesn't really matter because we're trying to cover use cases. But I tend to find a very interesting tension between things that have value for users and things that are coming to me because of like those startups having an agenda.
Yeah.
And I've said things like there's tabs. There's a tab widget in jQuery. I think we're out of time. People are needing to get out of here. Okay. Yeah, this will be the last one. I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, there's a jQuery tab, horizontal tab thing that I thought if there's multiple paths that a user can take through something like, I don't know, setting up a proxy or something, and there's like, 12 different providers to do that. Like, well, 12 is a lot. Let's say 5. Like maybe tabs for that area that's like, okay, if you're using Flannel, do this. If you're using whatever, do this. Yeah. And, keeping it Sweden, keeping it agnostic, that's going to be a constant tension. And it tends to just go to whatever vendor is pushing me the hardest right now. I mean, I can't go get excitement from companies that I don't work for and get docs from them. They have to push it to me, so, right. Anything else? I think we got to stop.
I think we better stop.
Thank you very much.